So I guess for our next performer, get your knees ready for the slapping, because Robert Zima is coming up for some stand-up comedy.
I'd like to start with a very moving story from the back roads of Kentucky. There was a world-renowned bagpipe player. He played all over the world. He played before kings. When he retired to the back roads of Kentucky. And one day his pastor came and said to him, "Hey, this homeless man died. Would you mind playing at his funeral?" He said, "I'd be delighted." So while he was going to the funeral, he got lost in the back roads. By the time he got there, it was all over. The workers were sitting there having lunch. So he walked over to the grave, looked down, the vault was sealed. He didn't know what to do, so he started playing Amazing Grace. He poured out his soul as he's playing Amazing Grace for this homeless man. And then he looked up and he noticed the workers were beginning to weep. Then he started to weep. He wept, they wept, as he poured out his soul for this homeless man. As he dried the tears, walked back to his car. As he was getting into his car, he overheard one of the workers say, "That's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I've been putting in septic tanks for over 20 years." Now, I am Polish. My grandfather came from Poland in about 1910. But people were making fun of him because he's Polish. So he said, "This one's for you, Tony." He said, "I'm going to pretend I'm an Italian." So he whipped up the best Italian accent he could find. Walking the store, he says, "I'll take a pound of salami, a pound of cheese, and a bottle of wine." The guy says, "Hey, are you a Polak?" He said, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He said, "This is a hardware store." Now, I teach at Palmdale. Let's face it, it's kind of a rough neighborhood. I'm walking out to my car. This guy bumps me in the parking lot. I said, "What, are you blind?" He said, "I hit you, didn't I?" I understand there's a Christian Science reading room out there. It's got its own bouncer. This guy put out some of those roach motels. The property value doubled. But I get my students come back to me. I teach at Palmdale High School, and it's kind of fun. This guy said, "Well, I'm a highway patrolman." And he said when he first started out, right out of the institute there, his boss says, "Well, I'm kind of busy, but hey, just go set up a speed trap on 405, and then if you have any trouble, let me know." So meanwhile, the Pope comes into L.A., and the Pope says to his driver, he says, "Look, everybody feeds me, they dress me. I want to do something for myself. Would you let me just drive the car?" The driver goes, "Okay." So here he gets in the car, and boy, he's really feeling it. He's speeding down the 405. My student pulls him over. And then he calls his boss. He goes, "My gosh, I just pulled over a famous person." He goes, "Well, who is he?" He said, "Well, I don't know, but he's got the Pope for a chauffeur." Now, Robert Schuller, he had a drive-in church, started off at a drive-in. He had the drive-in church there in the 50s. I guess that's okay. But when he tried to have a baptism in a car wash, I thought he was going too far. But enough about me. What about you? What do you think about me? Don't you get mad when these really supposedly experts are so stupid? This bird fell out of a nest in my backyard, and the darn thing wouldn't eat, so I called the veterinarian. So he said to use an eyedropper, but that didn't work. The food just piled up on his eye. They built a tunnel underneath the English Channel from England to France, but they're losing money on the deal because so many people are carpooling. In fact, they have a name for it. They call it the carpool tunnel syndrome. Now, through careful study of the Bible, I've discovered the Apostle Paul's father. Yes, it was the thief on the cross. We know that because Paul said, "My old man was crucified with Christ." Did Jesus rise from the dead?
Yes.
The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. What do you call a black astronaut? An astronaut, you racist. So I went to the beach to go scuba diving in Refugio. I look over and this guy's got a rake and he's pulling a jacket out of one of the outhouses. I said, "My gosh, you're not going to wear that again, are you?" He said, "No, but I left a sandwich in the pocket." So this homeless guy comes to my door and he's looking for a handout. I said, "Look, I'm kind of a libertarian, free enterprise, all that good stuff. Tell you what, here's some paint. If you paint the porch, I'll give you a bologna sandwich." He says, "Deal." So a couple hours later, he goes, "Well, I'm done." So I go, "Okay, here's your bologna sandwich." He said, "Oh, by the way, it wasn't a Porsche, it was a Mercedes." Now, I like to wear Hawaiian shirts, but they got some kind of weird habits over there. They're starting to adopt dolphins for pets. I understand now they're leading the porpoise-driven life. Well, lately I've been so excited about Jesus, I almost have to backslide just to get low enough to go to bed. So I was at this bar. I was just drinking Diet Coke, so they figured I'd be a good driver. So they said, "Hey, would you give this guy a ride home? He lives near you." I said, "Oh, I'd be happy to." So I help him. He just falls off the stool. So I drag him out to my car, set him up, try to get my keys. He just falls on the ground. So I stuff him in the back of the car, drive him home. He figured he'd be ready to go by now. Stand outside the car, he just falls in the mud. I kind of scrape him off. I drag him up to the door. His wife answered the door. I said, "Hi, I brought your husband home." She said, "Thanks, but where's his wheelchair?" Thank you.